Good afternoon and welcome to the November 10th Civil Service Commission meeting. May we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Hatamian.
Here.
Divine.
Here.
Gregorian.
Here.
Manukian.
Here.
And for the record, Commissioner Gantis is absent.
Okay, Mr. Hatamian, welcome aboard.
Thank you, sir.
Love to have you on this board. You're going to have a lot of fun. And can we take a second to... You want to introduce yourself and just your background? Can we do this in here on this? Fantastic.
Sure, definitely. It's my pleasure to be here, so thank you for the opportunity. It's also my pleasure to serve the city of Glendale. First and foremost, I would like to thank my wife, obviously, for encouraging me to go into civil service and bring my expertise and my experience from LA County, working at the Sheriff's Department as an advocate, to the city of Glendale. I think I applied or made the inquiry regarding becoming a civil service commissioner a year and a half ago. And at the time, I was working for the Office of Public Safety. Office of Public Safety transitioned into the Sheriff's Department, and I was part of that transition. And back then, I would always think to myself regarding bringing my experience or somehow contributing to the city of Glendale. I'm a product of the city of Glendale. I wasn't born in the city. However, I went to John Marshall Elementary School, I went to Wilson, and then to Glendale High School.
Ooh. Went to Roosevelt and Hoover. Okay. Well,
it's too bad that you guys lost to us in football, but we'll keep that off the record.
Well, welcome aboard.
Thank you, sir.
We're glad to have you.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, for the record, you took the Civil Service Commission comments out of order? Yes?
Am I fired?
No.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. I think I did that.
Thanks.
See, I love to have turns here. Keep me out of trouble. What's next?
Minutes.
Gentlemen, what's your pleasure?
I move for approval without reading.
Second.
May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Hatamian.
Here.
No, he has to abstain.
Oh, because on the minutes you weren't here at them? Okay.
Yeah, you can.
Okay, so he abstains?
Divine.
Yes.
Gregorian.
Yes.
Manukian.
Yes. What's next?
Oral communications.
Oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes. Commission may question the speaker, but there will be no debate or decisions. I see no cards. Anyone in the audience who wishes to speak? I see none. What's next?
Recruitment and examination status report.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this item is our recruitment and examination status report. This is a report we prepare for each meeting, and it simply shows the recruitment activity that our staff is currently engaged in. It represents the work of each of the various analysts within my staff, and it shows the recruitment processes at whatever stage they happen to be. Some haven't been opened yet, some have been opened, and some have had tests scheduled, and so on and so forth. But it is a good reflection of what limited hiring we are doing right now. If you have any questions about this report or any items, I'd be happy to try and answer those for you.
Okay. Guys, any questions?
Yes. Mr. Doyle, you mentioned limited hiring ability or question that are we going to hire or this is going to be free situation? So we are not going to hire anybody.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gregorian, we have been in a semi-official hiring freeze for probably going on 2 years now, just due to the situation we have with our budget currently. One would look at all of these recruitments and say, well, that doesn't look like much of a hiring freeze, but truly this does represent a significant slowdown from what we had experienced prior to this. We are experiencing somewhat limited turnover in our jobs, but the number of retirements we've experienced the past couple of years have been significant, and what these recruitments represent are probably a fraction of those vacant positions that we truly have. You see a lot of them are from Water and Power, which is a enterprise fund versus general fund, and the rest are scattered amongst police and fire. But for the most part, this is a reduced recruitment load compared to where we were at, say, 2-3 years ago. So.
Okay, any other questions?
I do have a question. On page 2, in the legends portion, I'm looking at approved requisition received by Human Resources Department. That's just basically means is that the retirement of individuals and placement of new ones.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hatamian, that means the requisition is what is the it's basically a form that we have that authorizes the appointing authority to make a hiring decision. Again, I preface this by saying that these are recruitments are at various stages. In most cases, these have approved requisitions for them. Some of them don't, but the requisition is what we receive in our office when there is an opening, and it simply means that the city manager's office has approved us to fill the position, and the finance department has certified that we have the funds available to fill that position. But that's simply what we mean when we talk about requisitions.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, I see none. What's next?
Eligible list established.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this item is, again, no Commission action is required. It's for information only, but this does represent the eligible lists that have been established since our last meeting. As you can see, there are 5 lists that have been established. 4 of them are promotional, and 1 is open. This report gives, of course, the title of the position that we're recruiting for, the department, whether it's open or promotional, the total number of applications received, as well as the total number of individuals who made it onto the eligible list. And that's what that column on the far right represents. Basically, after the process has been processed, we have, as you can see, generally it starts out with a large number of applicants and it gets smaller and smaller till you get to the list. One example is the one open recruitment process that we have here, which shows the community services officer, custody officer, in which we had 302 applications for that, and to my knowledge, we only have really 1 opening at this time. So
I have 41 eligible.
41 on the list, and it's actually good to have a list that large because we do have to go through and even at this point go through background investigations, and at that stage we end up losing a number of candidates as well.
Okay. Any questions?
So, yes, Mr. Chair. So how many openings do we have at this very moment? Total, we have eligible list over here, 1, 3, 4, 41, 1, but opening position is just 1 or maybe 2?
For which one? For or all of them?
Yeah, for example, the first one, senior water quality specialist.
Yeah, there'd be just 1 opening. In fact, for all of these, I'm only aware of a single opening at the current time. But the way we do this is that we establish an eligibility list. That list lasts typically for 2 years, and if we have additional openings over the course of that 2 years, we can go back to that list and pick off additional names. So
I see.
Mr. Doyle, don't get me wrong. The reason I'm asking, I would like to echo your announcement for the public, because they know that we have this much openings, and it's eligible list maybe 1 or 3 or 4, and the list is going to be for 2 years. So that's the reason I'm asking.
That's a good question, actually. And to follow up on his question, most of the time, for each bulletin number represents a specific 1 opening, correct? Or do we have situations where a bulletin number can be issued for multiple openings?
that's correct. The latter is true. We can have 1 bulletin and with multiple positions available. In fact, that's actually the ideal circumstance where to have more than just 1 position available. But in most cases, it starts out at least. We're not going to do a recruitment process unless we have at least 1 vacant position. But there could be more. And again, over the course of a year or even 2 years, additional vacancies could emerge. Go back to that list and fill off of the list.
Okay. Any other questions?
1 question.
Yes.
I'm assuming just based on the title that this is a lower level sworn position. Is that what this is, or is this a non-sworn?
Commissioner Hitami, if you're talking about the community services officer,
Yes.
that would be a non-sworn position.
Non-sworn.
The,
And this is one of those positions where they probably or may want to transition into becoming a police officer.
We have had some who've made that transition, but it is a much different job than the custodial officer is different. We've had some movement the other direction. Some officers who found out that line of work they weren't cut out for, so they've gone to a custody officer. But it is a good place to learn some of the regulatory aspects of law enforcement, and we've had some go both ways.
And considering the total number of applicants here, since we have 302, are there any internship positions available that maybe they can volunteer some time, and then does the city of Glendale offer that when you have such a high number of individuals who are interested in a specific position? Start off somewhere and contribute their time and possibly have a better opportunity or a chance to transition into these levels.
Commissioner Tamian, we do offer internships in various different occupations. To my knowledge, we've not done one in the custody officer area, but that certainly is an idea, particularly when we have this kind of competition for position. This is, in fact, a entry-level type position where there really wouldn't be a prior experience requirement, which is why we have so many, and which is why we tested so many for that position. In fact, that position had a written exam, a post-designed written exam, typing test, as well as an oral board. As I said earlier, it's not over yet. We still would need to put people through a background investigation as well. But internships are really good, and volunteer opportunities are of course, available. The department has the ability and the means to take someone on.
Chairman Nukian, what's your take on this issue of possibly offering internships when there are such a high number of applicants?
It's a very good idea, but I think where you might run into some logistics. For example, we have the reserve program as one way of getting their foot in through the police department, and I think it would be different for each type of. I love your suggestion, but I think it would be different for each particular category. I think you would have to treat it differently because, for example, post requirements for this particular field would have certain restrictions. Not everybody could necessarily qualify, and let alone go through their background clearance and all that. But it's a very good idea. I mean, I think especially in different bulletins, you might. It's a very good idea, but I think it might not always be a workable solution. But I see your point. You've got 302 applications, but I think also that has a lot to do with due to the economy and then. But it's a very good point that we can talk about. We can agendize the item and bring some thought and some input into different possibilities.
I mean, considering the fact that there's a budget crunch, not only in Glendale but all around LA County, and considering the position and considering the amount of people that have applied,
Yeah.
I mean,
How about we do this? How about Mr. Doyle? Maybe if we can request on one of our next meetings that we have available time, if you can come back and let us know all the different types of internship programs that the city itself offers, and then maybe we can, go from there and see maybe there's areas that we can explore and add to that program. Very good suggestion. Any other questions? We don't need approval for this, right? This is, okay. What's next?
Job bulletin for approval, fire battalion chief.
I see we've got our chief here. Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is a job bulletin for approval for the management level position of Fire Battalion Chief. As this is a fire sworn safety position, Civil Service Commission review and approval is required. This bulletin is consistent with its class specification. The hiring process, the selection process is identified on the bulletin, and our intent is to open this position upon this approval by the Commission, which would I believe next Monday, November the 15th, and run it through November 30th. This would be a promotional only recruitment process, therefore limited to our in-house foreign qualified personnel. Examination process is tentatively scheduled for December 16th of 2010. So that this is for your approval. And if you have questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them. As you mentioned earlier, Mr. Chair, Fire Chief Scoggins is here as well as Manya Hunanian, who worked on this bulletin.
Any questions?
I just wondered how many candidates are possibly eligible to take this exam, and whether there are any female candidates that are possible for.
How about unemployed real estate agents?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. I didn't hear the second part of your question.
The second
Commissioner
part
Devine.
was, out of the eligible candidates, were any of those female?
All of our fire captains would be eligible to take this exam if they meet the requirements for promotion. Right now, I don't know what that number is. We do have one female fire captain, and if she met the requirements of this promotional opportunity with the education, then she would also be eligible. So there's approximately 42 fire captains, and whoever meets the requirements will be eligible.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Simple formality question regarding the application. And this is for Mr. Matt Doyle. Regarding the experience, minimum of 3 years as a fire captain, and also the education and training halfway through the page. Is that part of the minimum requirements?
Yes, sir. This is, again, this language is taken directly off the class specification for Fire Battalion Chief.
So I'm just looking at this just as the application. I reviewed the application, and I'm looking at other characteristics. Is that part of the minimum requirements?
Other characteristics are, again, this language is off the specification. Other characteristics are simply that. These are the characteristics or qualities that we want to see in these candidates. And when it talks about the willingness to initiate, recommend, and carry out personnel actions, work overtime, these are things that we want to make very clear that this is what is expected of someone who is to put in for the Fire Battalion Chief position. And those characteristics presumably will be addressed in the various phases of the selection process.
The reason why I'm asking is that when I'm looking at the minimum requirements, and then we have other characteristics that follows right after, right? And you have experience, education, and training. See, in my mind, I'm thinking as formality for the purposes of simplifying. Experience and education and training, that's part of the minimum requirements. Should that possibly be under that section and then followed by other characteristics?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Do you see what I'm saying? Because it feels like experience and education and training is part of the minimum requirements.
So all you're saying
Yeah,
is changing the location?
All I'm saying is just formality for the purpose of simplifying for the applicant. When he's reading this and he's looking at minimum requirements,
Yeah.
for him to understand that below minimum requirements, all of those are part of what's required to be eligible, and other characteristics is just an additional
Miscellaneous.
aspect
Yeah.
to his meeting of those requirements.
I agree. I think that's an interesting, Are you sure you're not an engineer?
No.
I'm being nice. No, I mean, but
It's simply how the bulletins and the specifications are structured. I mean, again, all of it would fall under what we would say are minimum requirements. I see your point about there are hard requirements and then there are the knowledge, skills, and abilities. But again, we consider them all to be a requirement for the attainment of this position. So,
What's your take, sir? What do you think? Do you think it's clear as far as the minimum requirements are concerned when you're looking at it? If I'm an applicant and I'm looking at the minimum requirements, and then in the middle of the minimum requirements I have other characteristics, is that part of the minimum requirements? And then I continue on talking about the minimum requirements. I understand it's the usual format.
Approximately 9 months, maybe a year ago, I had the exact same question on some other bulletins regarding the format. I proposed a different format that I thought would be clearer, much along the lines you're thinking, and I was told that this is the standard format that's used throughout many other cities, and if we changed it, it wouldn't be in conformity with other cities. I felt this was adequate. So while I certainly agree with you, it was approached before and indicated that it's not the way to go. The only thing I would do, based on your comments here, since all of these are really part of minimum requirements, you might want to just make the line that says minimum requirements in a bolder type. So that would be the main category, and then all of these others fall under that.
Yeah.
But I agree with you, but I was overruled.
I think you guys are going to get along real well. No.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have a question from Chief. Oh, you can sit down. It's not considering the fact that we have 42 fire captain, how many openings are we anticipating for this position? In 1, 2, 5, or?
At the most, I'm anticipating 2. But not all the fire captains will qualify to take this exam. But at the most, it would be 2.
Any other questions? Chief Scoggins, while I have you up here, I was going to ask you, I was going to approach you on this. I've been approached many times within the city, and I've had questions thrown at me about the structure of the fire department. And, I'm very familiar with how, for example, for the police department, how you have the sergeants, the lieutenants, the captains, and when they start asking me questions about the fire department, I'm very confused. I don't know if this is the place for me to ask this, but I would like to see if there's ever a possibility where we can get a presentation. I don't know if it comes from Mr. Doyle or if it comes from the fire department, where how the structure of the fire department, how it works, battalion chief, captain.
I can do whatever you like. I can talk to you about it right now, or I can come back and...
I like to agendize
presentation.
it because I know I'll get into trouble right here. That's something that we can agendize and because it'll help both promote, people's understanding of how the structure of the fire department works in relationship, for example, to the police department, and how different it is for you guys. Is this something that we can get a presentation on, or doesn't have to be a...
certainly.
Okay.
We can look at the organization of the fire department, and it's something we can schedule at an upcoming meeting.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thanks. Any other questions? Okay.
Move for approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Hatamian?
Here.
Devine?
Yes.
Gregorian?
Yes.
Menuchyan?
Yes. Okay, what's next?
Report on advertising budget expenditure July 2010 to September 2010.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is a quarterly report on advertising expenditures. There's actually two parts to this report. The first has to do with the quarterly expenses for the first quarter of the 2010-2011 fiscal year, And then the second part looks at some of the sort of what I would call the year-end numbers from the 09-10 fiscal year. But the first part of this talks about what's occurred from July 1st through September 30th of this year, and it shows the expenses that have gone relative to our various recruitments that we've done, where we spent the money and what we spent them on. That's really the first chart that you have, and it has the expenditures divided into three categories. One, category A, dealing with publications or websites dealing with the various ethnic communities. Category B deals with, I would say, specialized publications for maybe a particular trade or technical area. And then Category C relates to those general type publications or expenditures of advertising in like Craigslist or the Glendale News Press or LA Times. As you can see, we've spent $4,969 in the first quarter. Our overall budget for the entire year is $40,000, so we're well within our budget. In fact, under that. So those are the expenditures, and the report does address some of the outreach efforts that we've done, aside from simply the advertising end of it. Some of the job fairs and other community events that we've participated in over the past 3 months. We went to a job fair dealing with veterans returning from military service back in October, and also we participated in the Unity Fest event that was here in Glendale on October the 10th, and we also attended the College and Career Fair for Glendale Unified School District on October 27th. So those are some of the things that we're doing, and like I said earlier, a lot of our recruitment is limited at this time. But we do, whether we have a lot of openings or not, we still like to have some presence in the community and make sure that we're there to answer any questions people may have about careers in general, the city of Glendale. The second part of this report, and that's the second chart on the page, dealing with the recruitment sources for applications received during the fiscal year 2009-2010. And this is something that we like to track just to see where people are hearing about our jobs, and ultimately it's really broken into two parts. First, where our applicants are coming from in general, and then the smaller chart at the bottom of the page, the second half of the page, talks about those that we've actually hired, showing the where they receive their information about the job. As has been the case for several years since we've been doing this report, the majority of our applicants, as well as our hires, are coming from the city's website. Simply people surfing the internet, looking at our jobs. And I haven't spoken with our IT department lately, but typically the jobs portion is one of the more popular areas of the city's website. So as you see, 57% of our total applicants are coming from that alone, and then the other various places where we advertise a much smaller number. As far as those actually hired, we're seeing again about a third of those got their information originally from our website, and other areas are referral by city employee, saw a job bulletin somewhere, and that would include in our offices or posted somewhere, perhaps at the Employment Development Department or the Unemployment Office. That would fit that category as well. So, this is good information we have. It helps us see where people are finding out about our jobs, and it also helps us determine where to invest advertising dollars. So, with that, if you have any questions on this, I'd be happy to try and answer them for you. And all I have.
This is, for the past several years, looking at this is just great. I mean, the way you have this, it really helps you within, going over it in 2 minutes, you get a very good idea of what you get for your money. And I agree with you. And it's always interesting that our website, city's website, gets the absolute most results. And one of the questions on I see a $1,500 item for Babayan Productions. This was a video production for the Glendale Police Department's outreach, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Is this something new,
Mr.
or is
Chair.
this the old one?
Yes and no.
Okay.
We had a video that we had made. It's been probably 2 years now, and
Yeah.
I know you and some of the other commissioners have seen it. We had to update that at the conclusion of that one. We had a statement by the then chief, who we now have a different chief. So we wanted to make sure we have our new
Right.
chief included, and then. The second part of that is that we did a similar outreach video targeting the Korean community.
That's what I was going to go to next.
Yeah.
When are we going to get to see that?
That is just about ready, and I'm looking at Miss Akopian. Would you mind coming up here?
She promised me that how long ago? I've
Good
been
evening.
learning Korean just to be able to watch that video.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Rosie Akopian, Human Resources Analyst 2. The video is ready. We're actually meeting with Mr. Babayan next week to take delivery of it, and then it's just a matter of scheduling the time to do a presentation however you wish.
How long is it? About 20 minutes?
Less than 20 minutes. It's closer to 15.
Okay, that's the Korean one, right?
Correct.
Okay. Is it also possible to get both of the videos, not necessarily for us to have, to be able to get it on a CD or a DVD? Or is this something that...
Yes, they're both available for you, and actually the reason we're waiting for the delivery is because the producer was having the covers stamped with, something that identifies what the DVD is, so that we can use it for promoting.
Now, this is...
Once we can.
Both of them are for the Glendale Police Department, right?
Correct.
Do we have anything similar like that for the fire department?
Not that I'm aware of.
No, it's been discussed, and the recruitment for the fire is a little different than for
Sure.
police. Tends to be ongoing. Fire is done typically once every 2 to 3 years in one big batch. So it makes it a little more challenging having a recruitment video, because that you're only going to be using
Yeah.
on limited occasions. But
Because we've had this dialogue about, the diversity of our fire department in relation to the demographics of our city, and I know that, the fire department has tried everything possible. Just as a possible suggestion, maybe this is something that, if the budget comes around, for them to consider that where we can use just an overall advertising tool to be able to send it to different ethnic communities, where they can put this seed into their mind that, the fire department is a very good career.
Absolutely. And Mr. Chair, I don't, just because they didn't do a specific outreach video, I don't want to sell the fire department short in any
Oh, no,
way, shape.
and I know that they
do a
tried
tremendous-
so hard. I mean,
They do a tremendous amount of
I know,
outreach.
I know,
All of
I
their
know.
public service
I know.
programs are all done in multilingual. They do
I know.
lots of work in the schools, and our public education unit is very active, very robust, working a lot with the schools and the young people in the community.
Absolutely.
And they're doing just an outstanding job trying to connect with the youth of this organization.
and I agree with you 100%, and they're doing a great job. It's just, we've tried a lot of different things, maybe different, ways of trying to tap into that. It might work, it might not work, but, I think maybe for the costs, I don't, something down the line to be considered. It's just an idea.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Just a question regarding USA Armenia Life and New Armenia. Those are magazines, I'm assuming, right?
I
Or
don't know, are
newspapers?
they? I think,
I believe they're both, yes, print publications.
Publications. And I obviously targeted towards the Armenian community. Do we outreach towards the Filipino, Hispanic community
Yes,
as well?
yes, we do.
Yeah.
In fact, this is one of the rare times where we only have the one group listed, but typically there
Korean,
are 3 or
I've
4
Okay.
Korean, Hispanic ones listed, and I made the same observation as I was looking at this report. So we'll be sure to continue doing broader outreach. So.
okay.
Thank you.
Any action required? None. Okay. What's next?
Presentation on the role and function of the Civil Service Commission and employee rights under civil service.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, we have a presentation to do today, and it's a rather brief PowerPoint presentation, but this came as a result of a request by Chairman Nukian at a few meetings ago about the role of the Commission, but more importantly, employee rights that are available in the civil service process here at the City of Glendale. I think it's a good topic. It's certainly something that it's worth presenting at this time, and I think it's very timely since we have a brand new commissioner and a somewhat new commissioner in Mr. Gregorian, who's been with us about 6 months, and I think a good opportunity to go through the roles, functions, and various questions that you may have. So without any further ado, I'll go right into the presentation. And
I want to really thank you. I know with everything that you guys have on your desk, this is something that was important for me. I appreciate you having this done. Thank you.
Again, the focus will be on really 2 areas: the role of the Commission and really the employee rights. I'm going to do this presentation more or less following the civil service rules, sort of chapter by chapter. At least that's how I was able to logically put this presentation together. So if you wonder how we came up with the particular order, it more or less corresponds with the civil service rules, sort of chapter by chapter. One thing I do want to say, when we talk about employee rights under civil service, in many cases it also refers to applicant rights as well. People who are not only employed by the City of Glendale, but also people who are not employed by the City of Glendale, but who participate in our recruitment process, because they have as many rights as our existing employees.
Now, when we have questions, you want us to hold and ask at the end, or is it okay if we, as you're going through this, for us to ask the questions?
I'd say feel free to interrupt
Okay.
at various points.
Just to put the point that you brought up, the minute these rights are granted to the employee or so basically, if I understand correctly, the minute an application has been submitted, all of these rights apply?
It depends on the particular aspect, but if we're talking about someone who applies for a job at the City of Glendale, and they feel that either the process was unfair or something that would cause them to wish to appeal, they have that right to do so. Other matters, when you get into questions of disciplinary action or transfers, things like that, that would only apply logically to existing employees.
Now, is that the same for hourly and full-time employees, or?
Mr. Chair, that's a great question. Our hourly positions are not civil service. They don't fall under the civil service. They're considered unclassified. So they would not have the same level of rights as far as many different areas here.
So none of the hourly employees have civil service protection?
That is correct.
Okay. How about like reserves? Police officer reserves?
They do not have civil service protection. Essentially, they are volunteers when they do patrol and law enforcement work. There are occasions, specific assignments where they do get paid, but either way, they're either considered volunteer or hourly and are considered at will. Now, if a police officer reserve applies for a salaried position, police officer recruit, or police officer, then they would have rights.
Okay.
With regard to that examination process.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
I
sir.
have a question. You clarified the hourly position. Will you clarify over here the classified versus unclassified status? Might as well we are here and
Certainly.
everybody's watching, please.
And let me get to that as far as the presentation, because that's really the first slide we talk about unclassified versus classified. Really, one of the main functions that the Commission has to do with the classification plan. Classification simply means it's a method of grouping job titles by similar duties, similar functions, in order to have them represented in a logical fashion within the organization. And a lot of decisions are made based on how jobs are categorized or classified, particularly as we organize our different departments and things like that. And it's also used in many respects, to determine compensation, pay levels, whether something's management or mid-management, even though this commission has no authority over issues of compensation and benefits. The whole classification plan, oftentimes we're looking at similar job functions, jobs, duties. A lot of times we'll make decisions as far as compensation based on the comparability of those jobs. But with regard to the Civil Service Commission and the authority of the Commission, the biggest area or the biggest involvement that the Commission has is in the area of the class specifications, which typically, although we don't have one tonight, just about every meeting we have some type of a job specification brought to you, whether it's a new specification or a revision of an existing one. And that is fully within the authority of the Commission to look at that job specification and make determinations as far as, I wouldn't say not so much as what the job duties are. I mean, that's more of a managerial right. But as far as determining minimum requirements, educational years of experience, that sort of thing, the Commission has very broad authority and discretion upon working with the different departments and determining those things. If we were to bring a job specification to you for a custodial worker, and if it were to say, this job requires a bachelor's degree in something, it would be appropriate for the Commission to question that and say, does that position really require a bachelor's degree? And that sort of thing. So it's really an important role of the Commission to read those and question what requirements were. You saw this job bulletin earlier today for the fire battalion chief, and this specification was brought to you probably within the last 2 years, as I think you've all observed. Many of the educational backgrounds, the certifications, the classes required to compete for that have been elevated in recent years. There's in general been a higher level of expectation for jobs in that area. So, again, those are the types of things that are brought to you in the form of a job specification. So that's one of the primary responsibilities of the Commission. The second part of that, the classified versus unclassified status, the Commission has the full authority for determining whether a particular position should be classified or unclassified. And as I was saying earlier, most of our salaried full-time positions are classified positions. They all maintain the civil service status. And for clarification on that, what that means is that employees either hired or promoted into a particular job, they serve a probationary period where they are essentially at will during that period of time. But once they pass that probationary period, they are considered to have civil service protections. And really what that means is that any actions taken, any adverse actions taken against those employees, the civil service protections give them various rights to appeal or challenge that action, starting with an appeal to their department head, to the city manager's office, and ultimately before the Civil Service Commission itself. So it's a very, very important designation. The few positions that we have in the city that are declared unclassified, in other words, outside of the civil service purview, are those typically that we expect to be of limited duration, where we think the position may not have some level of permanency that we would associate with the typical salary position here at the City of Glendale. Example, I believe it was about a year ago, we brought a series of positions that were grant funded through the stimulus grant, the ARRA grants. The funding for that is not guaranteed, and we anticipate that that may be going away. I believe it was within 3 years. So in that circumstance, we don't necessarily want to grant people hired into those jobs full civil service protections if we have to end up laying them off or eliminating those positions at some point into the future.
I'm sorry, just a quick note. I'm just trying to get the rationale behind that. I understand the part about, you're being hired based on this grant. Most likely this grant is going to run out in 3 years. And we're going to have to let you go at that time. But the part that I don't understand, why shouldn't that person have the civil service protection during that period? What are the negative consequences for the city?
Chairman Ukin, the only aspect where civil service protections really come into play are when you're trying to remove an employee or discipline them. So the idea is that when those positions have to be eliminated, that the employee doesn't acquire or believe that they have some type of right to appeal that and engage in some long drawn out hearing.
So that's the
rationale.
Okay.
Yes, and years ago, and it's too bad Commissioner Gantis isn't here, but years ago we had a very large number of positions that were declared unclassified that within the Community Development and Housing Department that were mostly funded either through the Workforce Investment Act or the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG. The ironic part of that was that many of these positions had been around not just 5 years or 10 years, 15 years, but up to like 20 years. We'd had people that were hired back in like the 70s when these programs first came up. And ultimately, and it was through Chair Coleman and, former Commissioner Coleman and other commissioners that recognized that, this doesn't make sense. If somebody's been working for the city for 25 years, at this point, it does appear that those positions are somewhat, have somewhat of a permanent basis. So at that point, we went back and brought, it was close to, I believe it was over 100 positions into the classified service. That was done, I believe, around 2003, 2004.
So originally they were hired as unclassified. After the review, that you decided that you could make them classified.
And
so that is an option.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is
That's
correct.
going to be my next question. Yes.
20 years. 20 years too.
Yes.
But there's no specific guideline that says this is the threshold.
No.
That just happened that after this popped up because the review indicated, okay.
That was the line of thinking originally, and after, again, 15, 20, 25 years, we all came to the conclusion that, this is absurd. These people are as permanent as you can imagine. And, no one expects some of these federal programs to really ever go away. The stimulus money, again, we don't know. We don't know how long those are going to last. And again, there are probably 6 or 7 positions right now under that heading that are declared unclassified.
Wasn't the police officers, the FBI grant, was that classified? Or
It was the DNA lab.
DNA lab, I'm sorry, the DNA lab.
Which the funding for that is only guaranteed for, I believe, 3 years.
3 years.
And so that was declared unclassified. And there's been some discussion about that because we're having some difficulty recruiting for that.
I could imagine.
And so that may, we're analyzing that right now, but we may be reconsidering that decision.
Because it makes a lot of sense. I mean, you already have a very limited source of pool out there to begin with.
Yes.
You had a question, I'm sorry.
It wasn't really a question. I was going to mention this before we got started on it, but when Mr. Doyle mentioned John Gannis's name, I think this is a very, very important issue we're looking at. I also feel that John Gannis should be here from 2 standpoints. One, so he has the privilege and the ability to gain the same knowledge we're going to gain. And 2, as Matt mentioned, that he has a lot of history. And perhaps as we go through this, as I have questions that perhaps Mr. Gannis would be able to shed some light on it. So at this point, I would suggest to my colleagues that we postpone this till we have a full commission. We can then all gain from the information.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Devine, I couldn't agree with you more. If that's your,
I have no problems.
Mr. Gantis does
I agree
have
with Mr. Commissioner Devine.
does have a wealth of information on this, having been a commissioner for 10 years, and that would certainly be okay.
Well, now
with
his
me.
ego is going to get really
I
big.
know.
Jesus Christ.
You have
Okay.
to. I mean,
Okay. All right, John.
we make a Christmas present, later.
No, but point well taken. Yeah, I agree too. John has been around a long time, and he's seen it all, and he, his input can have a big role into this. Much as I hate to admit that, do we need a motion to postpone this, or do we need to?
You can certainly do that by way of a motion to table the matter to a future date.
Do I ever get to use this for anything at all?
Yes, you can. Today you can.
I certainly hope not.
Okay. All right.
I move that we postpone this till we have a full commission.
Second.
Okay.
Third.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Hatamian?
Here, yes.
Devine?
Yes.
Gregorian?
Yes.
Menuchyan?
Yeah. Okay. What's next?
Let's see that.
Agenda forecast.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, agenda forecast is published. We anticipate items coming in our upcoming meetings, but we have nothing scheduled at this point. On the December 8th, 2010, I do expect to have a specification relating to the reorganization occurring within the community planning department currently. It's my intention to have that presented there, as well as whatever else comes up as far as any other items. And if it's okay with the commission, I will do this presentation that we plan tonight on that date, assuming
On which
everyone will
date?
be December the 8th, which is our next meeting.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Yes.
I'm sorry. On the item that you're going to have talked about on the reorganization, will that include the job specs that we talked about in terms of
Yes, that is
including all the eligible people?
correct. That is our intention to have that.
Yeah, and if we can get confirmation, make sure that everyone's going to be present on that day, because I had asked several different city employees to watch tonight for this presentation. So in any case, so we're going to do this on the next meeting, which would be December the 8th, and after the presentation, is it also possible for us to get a copy of the PowerPoint presentation that you're going to give us on a CD, or if we
It
can...
was included in your packet.
Yeah, no, I mean on a CD that we, if possible, or you don't even, you can just email it to us. This is something that I think that we could use it as commissioners, if to outreach within the city. Okay. What's the next item?
Reports and information past due employee performance evaluations.
Okay, Mr. Devine, this baby's yours.
Okay. Under the no past dues, we have City Manager's Office, City Treasurer's Office, Finance Department, Fire Department, Human Resources, Police, and Public Works. So I think those all deserve a commendation from the Commission for doing their duties very diligently. There's one column here that I don't know whether Mr. Doyle needs to do anything about it, but it's the first time I've seen the second notice column with X's in it. And under the, we have information services that has a second notice for one employee, and the library for 3 employees. So I would ask, when that occurs, do you automatically send out a reminder, or how does the process work on that?
A reminder does go out. All the department heads get a memo indicating their status as far as how many late evaluations they have.
Okay.
So that's been done.
Okay. So other than that, I think overall we have a very good record for the evaluation submissions.
Okay. What's next?
Civil Service Commission and our staff comments.
Okay. We took that,
You can certainly reopen that and see if there are any additional comments.
absolutely. Any comments?
Thank you.
Okay. We have, yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, just a couple of items. First of all, you all received a report on City of Glendale workforce demographics. This is a report that was prepared, we drop a copy of this off with you all each year, and it's a reflection of our organization, the workforce demographics, broken down into just about as many categories as you could possibly imagine. And it looks at our various race and ethnic groups within the organization on an overall basis, then sort of department by department. It's a wealth of information, and we try and get a copy of this out each year. I think it's of interest to the Commission. We get a copy of this to the City Council as well. And this is on our website, by the way, in case anyone out in the public is interested in looking at it. But we do print out limited numbers for our City Council members and some of our boards and commissions. But for the most part, you'll look at some of these charts, and once again, it shows a continuing diversification of this organization from one year to the next. And we have categories going back to the year 2000 and showing progress made on that front. Again, it's broken down to a number of different categories where you can look at how each department is doing and how we're doing as far as managers, executives, and that sort of thing. So I encourage you to take a look at this, and if you have questions, comments, you can always come back. But otherwise, it's really there for your information.
Will there be an exam on this next time?
This is a phenomenal report. It's an excellent
Actually,
report.
this is prepared by the City Auditor's Office, and they do an excellent job. The summary is, I think, helpful if you want to kind of cut through a lot of the different charts. But I notice even the summary is about 12 pages long. So, but again, we take this report very, very seriously, and certainly our diversity within our organization. It's been an ongoing effort for us in HR, as well as all the different department heads, to make sure we have an organization that is purely reflective of the community we serve. And we try very hard to do that. And again, this report gives us a bit of a scorecard where we're at, where we're making progress. So,
Who in your department do we give special thanks to for, or is it a collaborative effort?
this is a collaborative effort, but 90% of in fact, 100% of the credit goes to the City Auditor's Office, because they take the numbers and Michelle Flynn is the city auditor,
person,
and
maybe.
Jason Bradford is, actually Jason has recently moved to work to our finance department, but Jason is the one who has been compiling this data for the last few years. He's a brilliant guy and really has done an excellent job. So,
Very good.
Mr. Chair, is it possible to mention a name that we can thank him or her? Because, they did a fantastic job, so...
I agree.
Yeah, I think you just did.
just did.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, you just named the person.
Accommodation letter from us or any of the above. Kudos.
So will you repeat it again,
All-star
please?
lunch.
His name is Jason Bradford.
Mr. Jason Bradford.
Yes,
Thank you. And
he
then-
was the principal auditor in the city auditor's office. Recently, he took a promotion to become the budget administrator for the city.
Well deserved.
Well-deserved and well-needed. We have some serious budgetary issues, and it's good to have somebody like Jason keeping tabs on that. So, thank you.
Okay, what's next?
There's no closed session, adjournment?
Move to adjourn?
We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.